Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey friends, welcome into episode 137. Super excited about this one because I'm bringing on a repeat guest to the podcast. This is somebody who is absolutely one of my favorite humans in the web design and digital marketing strategy world. This is Wes McDowell. If you don't know him, he is a website strategist, and he is, I think, one of the top minds when it comes to how to use your website alongside all of these other digital marketing platforms. And that's exactly what we talk about in this episode. I thought it was a really great time to bring him back onto the podcast to talk about how you can use your website, and then particularly for your clients, how they can use their websites alongside all of these other digital properties that we all have, whether it's YouTube videos or Instagram accounts or Facebook. I mean, a lot of people have like ClickFunnels and landing pages or course sites that are outside of regular websites. And one of the questions a lot of my clients had was, why do I need a website if I already have a Facebook page or a landing page somewhere? Well, in this episode, you're going to hear a lot of thoughts as to why a website is more important than ever. And I think what's really exciting about this episode is you're going to hear and get a feel for kind of what to tell clients when they ask you that. So I would listen to this episode with a couple different lenses. I meant to say listen with a different ear, but you get me. I would listen to this from approach of what you're going to do with your site, but also every single one of the points that Wes and I dive into here are things that clients are going to ask you and that hopefully will empower you to kind of know what to tell them. So I say all that to say I'm super excited to hear how this one helps you out and empowers you. Wes, again, is just one of my favorites. He's such a wealth of knowledge. He's such a fun guy to talk to. I just feel like he's just really has a great mind for strategy as well, which is so important. So can't wait to hear how much value you're going to get from this one. Now, before we dive in, I actually wanted to do a quick podcast review shout out. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but Ellen Cake 8 recently left a review on the podcast, and it was so great. I just wanted to share it with you real quick. She says, "Best web design podcast. Josh's podcast continues to be my go-to for web design knowledge and inspiration. Whenever a new episode comes out, I usually move it to the top of my podcast feed and listen to it as soon as I can. I love that Josh goes very in-depth into topics that he talks about. I feel like he's truly trying to help web designers as much as he can and that he cares about his listeners." Ellen, thank you so much for that review. It really means the world to me to hear that review and see it, but also what you said at the end. Ellen mentioned the care factor with this, and I hope you listening to this feel that as well. I don't know how long you've listened to this podcast, but if you go for a little while, I hope you uncover the fact that I am not a typical entrepreneur who's out to get rich quick kind of thing. That is not what this is about. I am truly passionate about sharing my expertise and knowledge that I've learned in a decade of building websites and starting and growing a web design business with you so that you can do the same. And I know that's kind of the tagline, but I truly mean it. And it means the world to me to get a review like that and to hear that. So if you are like Ellen and you're loving the show, please leave a review on Apple, particularly if you listen there. It really does go a long way. I read them, people read them. It helps out with me growing the show. And I don't take ads for this show. So, I mean, technically I don't make any money off the podcast aside from it, passively going into my courses. So it would really mean a lot. Please leave a review. And Ellen, thank you for taking the time to do so. You made my week with that. And last thing real quick before we dive in, no course I'm going to promote on this one. I wanted to say I recently launched a brand new 10-step action plan for you, depending on where you are in your web design journey. You can go to joshhall.co/get started, all one word, joshhall.co/get started. And from there, you'll be able to choose which free 10-step action plan is right for you. You'll either be able to go down the path towards learning how to build websites, starting and growing your business, or if you already have a web design business that you want to scale to 6 figures and beyond, I created a 10-step action plan for you. Just go to joshhall.co/get started. Choose which one is right for you. And I'm excited again to continue on to help you in your journey. And now, without further ado, let's talk about how you can use you and your clients' websites alongside social media and all other digital properties in this day and age with my man, Wes McDowell. Wes, welcome back onto the show, man. So good to have you back on.
Thank you so much, Josh. Good to be here again.
Yeah, it's been a little while. I'll have to look back at when your first episode was. I think it was like in the 40s or 50s that you were on the first time. So we're well into the hundreds now. It's awesome to have you on again.
Wow.
You are one of my favorite examples of, well, a lot of things on the online world. You have a thriving YouTube channel. You have a lot of different stuff going on, but you are really good at conversion-based design and mixing social media with websites together. So I'm really excited to talk about the importance of websites and what you're seeing with a lot of your students and a lot of your customers now. Before we get into that, though, man, do you want to let everybody know, maybe who hasn't heard your first episode, where you're based out of? And I'm curious, when somebody meets Wes McDowell and they ask you, what do you do? What do you tell them? Because I imagine it's kind of hard to summarize what you do.
Yeah, that's one of those. Well, first of all, I'm in Chicago, right by Wrigley Field. But yeah, that question is always a tough one. It's like my mom will always try to tell her friends what I do. And she's like, it's something to do with the internet or, something like that. Basically, I tell people I help small business owners master their own websites so that they can use it as a tool to get them more business, generally more clients, being service businesses.
Perfect. Very concise. Yeah. My wife and I we're building a house right now, and we're in well, we just recently had like the blueprint meeting and construction meeting with the job supervisor. And I was a blue collar dude. I was a cabinet maker, so I can relate to those guys. But it was funny because he asked me what I did, and I was like, all right, how can I sum up what I do so that he's going to understand? I was like, well, I teach online courses to web designers. And he kind of looked at me. And then the other guy who is in the process with us, who kind of knows me, he's like, he has an online business. And he's like, oh, all right. So
yeah,
sometimes I guess it depends on it depends on the room you're in on how you explain it. Yeah. But yeah, I was always curious because you do a lot of things. And yeah, websites are critical, man. But first off, I just wanted to give you a quick shout out and congratulations on your YouTube channel. 6 million plus views, which is awesome. You're closing in on 150,000 subscribers. Man, congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. It's surreal for sure to think of that many people have seen my stuff. So I still can't get over that number.
And by the time this comes out, this may have already happened, but you shared with me before we went live, if you're open to sharing now, you're going to take a break on the podcasting side of things, right? And just focus on YouTube?
I am, yeah. So I don't know when this is coming out, but basically we've got enough episodes to get us to, I believe, around the end of the year. But at that point, I am retiring it. I'm not saying it'll never come back, but basically at a certain point, you do have to take an inventory of what's working in your business and what's not. And we talked a little bit before we went live here. My numbers weren't bad. They're not anywhere near my YouTube numbers. And when I think about the time I spend, wouldn't I rather put more time and effort toward the thing that's reaching, more than 10 times as many people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's extra work for a teeny tiny fraction. It's the Pareto principle, right? Do the 20% that's going to get the 80%. At the end of the day, the podcast was not the 20%. So,
well, it's a great business lesson right off the gate here, man, to focus on what is working in your business and is going to yield the biggest return on investment. So I'm excited for you, man. I mean, your YouTube, like I mentioned, is already crushing it right now. So my gosh, when you give all the attention that your podcast has got, once you invest even more into YouTube, I can't imagine where it's going to go from there. So that's really cool. And the beauty about your podcast, and I think everyone listening, if you're getting into any sort of content marketing, just because you pause something or take a hold on it, it doesn't mean that like you're going to turn off your podcast. All those episodes are still there. So I'm sure you can continue to repurpose those and send people back to them, or use those as, content moving forward. Like there's so much benefit to having something there that can service for a very long time. So yeah, that's exciting, sure, man. Yeah, that's cool. And I know we talked about the differences between our audiences. I'm really helping web designers. You are helping web designers, but you kind of let me know that your key, actually perfect question to kick us off here. What is your key avatar? What's your key customer avatar? Because I think you have a different perspective on websites and social media than maybe I do with web designers. So yeah, who's your perfect customer?
Yeah, great question. So basically, you cater to the web designers. I cater to the small business owners who really can't afford to hire a web designer for themselves. So I'm basically showing them all the little things they can do on their own website to increase those conversions and what to do to increase the traffic so people can find their website. And then once they're there, they can convert. So yeah, I'm really speaking to that end user, the end business owner.
Okay. So this was going to be my first question, but perfect segue to this question, which is, let's pretend I'm a business owner who's fairly savvy. I've got some social media and maybe I have a website, but I don't really pay it much attention or I haven't invested in it. If I were to tell you, Wes, if you were coaching me and I said, why do I need a website and why do I need to focus on that when I have a thriving Instagram or a thriving Facebook or a different channel? Like why should I focus on a website? What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, it's really the difference, I think, between having a marketing department and a sales department. I think of social media as the marketing. It's the driver to get people, it's to get your word out, it's to get people over to your sales team, which is your website. That's where you can really control the conversation in a linear way. Because let's think of social media. Not only are you competing with everything else that's going on there, right? The cat photos, the food photos, the reels, all that kind of stuff. But you're also competing, if you're just looking at your account as doing the job of your website, it's very scattered. There's scattered information in a grid where people just kind of pick and choose a la carte what they want to see versus, right, they come to your website where you can very smartly lay out a case from top to bottom of all the right information that a person needs to know to be convinced. Can't really do that on social media, can you? I mean, not as well.
Yeah. Wow. What a great analogy and what a great way to visualize that. I've never heard that before, Wes, but I completely agree. That really set off my idea light bulbs just going left and right because first of all, I'm going to rip that off. That's awesome, but I'll give credit where credit is due. But it is great because it's so true. Social media often can engage and inform, but at the end of the day, is somebody going to read a Facebook post and invest $1,000 in a program or a service for small businesses? Probably not. They need to go somewhere. And as you know, as a Facebook ads guy, I know you have some resources on that. I know that's not your main thing, but it is something that you're well known for, unfortunately, or not. But a lot of people are going to do ads, and what does an ad need to do? It needs to send somebody somewhere. So it should go back to the website. Is that something that you've really told a lot of business owners to help switch their mindset? Is that social media, like I guess in the analogy of like a tree, they're kind of the branches that extend out, but then at the end of the day, the trunk is what holds it all together, which is the website. Is that, you don't have to use that analogy, but is that kind of what you try to help your clients and customers change their mindset to?
Yeah, for sure. And I like your analogy with the tree, but I think of it like the hub and spokes too is another way. Like the outside of the tires, like all the different traffic sources, but the middle, you're sending everyone to the middle. You're sending everyone to your website where, again, you can control that conversation. And yeah, I mean, social media is not a replacement for your website. It just isn't. And yeah, you brought up a good point. When you do paid ads rather, you need to send them somewhere. I get this question a lot on YouTube comments. People, especially on my Facebook ads videos, they'll say, do I need a website for Facebook ads? Yeah, you can't just send them. Right. I guess you could send them to your Facebook page or your Instagram page. I've never tried that, but that's not a good experience. And that's certainly not set up for conversions, meaning that ad is going to fail and you're going to lose money on that ad. Yeah,
good call. What are your thoughts about some of these ClickFunnels? I know a lot of people just want a landing page for ads or ClickFunnels versus an actual website. I think you probably already know how I feel about that, but what's your take on that as somebody who is working with a lot of DIYers and business owners who, maybe they don't necessarily need a full-blown website, but of course I recommend they at least have a home. But yeah, what are your thoughts on ClickFunnels and some of these other landing page style builders and platforms versus an actual home website?
Yeah, well, So first of all, there's a big misconception about what a funnel actually is. Like a lot of people, I'm sure this audience is all very aware, but my audience is a little less savvy. They're just more small business owners. They hear the word funnel. They see the ClickFunnels marketing of you're just one funnel away. A funnel is not a piece of software, right? That's the important thing that people need to understand. A funnel is just that start to finish kind of roadmap of getting people into your world and then giving them all the information, giving them everything they need in order to make a conversion. So when we talk about something like ClickFunnels, I think of that as more or less a stopgap measure, kind of like a website with training wheels, if you will.
That's good.
Everything's kind of built out already for you, so you don't have to think too much. The problem with these things is, first of all, it's expensive software. Like I think ClickFunnels is, I haven't looked into it lately, but I think it's very expensive from what I heard last. A couple $100 a month, I think. And the other thing is these websites that ClickFunnels will give you generally look very ClickFunnels-y, right? They look like that sales page that just makes you look like a used car salesman with your business. It just doesn't look like you're going to be in business 5 years from now at all. Yeah. And that's where the damage comes in. And you can have all that stuff. Sorry, you can have everything you can have on a quote funnel, like a ClickFunnel, on your own website. And thanks to all the tools we have access to now, your audio, people listening to this know how to make websites. But even the ones who don't, there's things like Elementor now, just as easy to make a website on your website as it is to make one on ClickFunnels or on Wix or something like that.
Yeah, especially when it comes to a sales page or a landing page. Yeah, I'm a Divi guy, you're an Elementor guy, but a lot of my audience now are using Elementor and some other builders as well. The principle remains the same though. There is a huge difference in something you own and something you build off of WordPress, which is why I love WordPress. It's open source. I'm not worried that they're going to shut down my site one day. There's also, when it comes to websites versus social media, I'm not sure what you've seen on this, but of course we've all seen accounts getting deleted or paused, no matter what it is. We're in a very polarizing time, and the least little thing that is said or maybe misunderstood can really have a huge impact on businesses if they don't own their platform and they don't own their content. So like if everyone has their whole business on YouTube and Instagram, it's like, good luck. Hopefully, for whatever reason, hopefully that, something isn't going to happen. Whereas when you have a website, you own it. And I think this is such an important point, I think, for everyone listening to relay to clients too, because I'm sure everyone listening is going to have clients ask the same thing. Why do I need a website if I've got a thriving YouTube channel? Or maybe I do all my networking on LinkedIn. But the question is, where do you send them? And I always experience this on Facebook in particular. And this was primarily, I was thinking back to like maybe 2012 and 13, or maybe even shortly after that, where Facebook really, really ramped up from a business perspective in that era. And I got tagged left and right on Facebook for referrals, which was cool, but I don't want to get a personal message from somebody to my personal inbox about website stuff. I don't want them to share they could share my business profile, but I wanted them to share my website. And that was the key, because if someone gets sent to my Facebook page, again, like you said, Wes, it's not the ideal sales funnel. Like it still is kind of that middleman between going to my website. Whereas if somebody shares my website, boom, there is a clear call to action. There's a funnel to make sure we get people going to the right place. That's what I was after. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest important aspects of websites in regards to sharing it on social media, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard to get people to share what you want them to share, though. That's the thing. I do find as long as people are sharing you in some way, that is good. It's positive. It's actually good signals to Google too, because they know what Google likes is to reward brands with a really robust online presence. So if they see anyone sharing any of your online properties, ultimately that does look good on you. And it is an uphill losing battle to try to tell people exactly what you want them to share. But I get you. I'd rather people share my website too.
My counter to that, or the next step I would always take is when somebody would inevitably just tag my personal profile or even share my business profile, I would always say, first off, thank you. Thanks for the share. Appreciate it. I always thank the person sharing. That's a biggie. But then I would post, you guessed it, my website. And I would say, I would love to talk. Go here. That way we can start the conversation and you'll find everything you need to know. Which maybe that was actually an even better strategy now that I think of it, because now suddenly my Facebook is getting shared and I'm able to share my website and people are clicking off to that. And like you said, Google, Facebook, all these platforms, they know what the heck is going on. So who knows? Maybe that was actually a better strategy than I thought of. But yeah, that was always the end goal. Get people to the website. And I'm curious, a lot of DIY owners that you've seen, Wes, are you finding that a lot of people are posting their videos and content on different platforms, but just neglecting posting that as well on the website?
Probably. I mean, here's the thing. Most people, when they find me, when they get to me, are kind of new in the process, and content creation isn't even really on their radar yet. But it's very important to do. And it's really important that does live on your website, because at the end of the day, when you want to send people to that content, you need to be sending them to your website so you can retarget them. Retargeting is a little less powerful now because of iOS 14, but you can still do it, particularly with people who are coming to your website on desktop. But you really want to be able to harness as much of that traffic to your website as possible to reach back out for any of those people and serve them up Facebook ads, Instagram ads, that kind of thing. Really important to do that.
Totally. If you wouldn't mind, man, sharing some of your strategy with your YouTube, because I think this would be beneficial for anyone who does any sort of content marketing. With all of your videos, I imagine ultimately you want to get people to your website like we've talked about, but do you have any sort of sequences to where one video might lead to another video, then to another video, then to your website and into a call to action? Or do all of your videos and posts lead to your website? What does your strategy look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Anyone who's doing YouTube, listen up, because this is really important stuff. I paid a lot of money to learn this from Tim Schmoyer at Video Creators. But basically, what you don't want to do is lead people to your website in every video. Sounds counterintuitive. And I've heard other YouTube experts say, of course you want to lead people to your website. You're not doing YouTube for a hobby, you're doing it for business. And while I get that, I would rather get more people watching me on YouTube. And the way you do that is keep people on YouTube. Okay. So you need to, the best thing you can do is follow that like 3/4 rule. So out of every 4 videos, so I post 4 a month. So 3 of those videos will lead right into another video. So at the end, rather than saying, first of all, you want to eliminate that wrap up language that almost every YouTuber does. Like the thing like, all right, guys, hopefully that was helpful. Those were the 5 tips. As soon as people hear that, they know the video's over and they go to the next video.
So like the first 50 videos on my YouTube channel, you'll hear that. Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a common mistake because everybody does it and everyone models what they've seen. Yeah. But, and it does feel jarring to not do that. It's like answering the phone and not saying hello. It's a weird, but it's a block you have to get over. So what I do is I teach what I teach in the video, and then I say, and now I've got these other 5 tips to teach you. It's going to help you go even further. Here's the video to help you do that. Click there and we'll continue the conversation. So it's just a seamless, go to this next one and you tell them why. So you have to think of the video that's the perfect, like either pairing for this one or the, more advanced version or something like that. Just you'll give them the reason how it fits. Yeah. And then for the other 1/4 of the videos, that's when I get to send them back to my website, generally for a lead magnet, usually my masterclass, that kind of thing, which leads into my paid program.
And are most people coming into that first video, or do you find people going into like video number 3 out of 4? Because I'm sure that would feel a little bit different for them if they see a video and then the next one is a call to action versus somebody getting into that first video type of funnel.
Yeah. So the good point of clarification there. What I'm not really talking about is I'm not making a predefined series of like 5 videos.
Okay.
All I'm doing is I'm making a video and then I'm thinking to myself, what other videos in my library would be a good fit,
okay.
like a good next one for this one.
So you're not doing like a month of 4 videos as a funnel, then the next month of 4 videos as a funnel. No. It's just piecing what ones would work well together.
Yeah, you could do that. But then again, you run into the problem you just said, where now maybe they're coming in at a weird place.
Yeah.
So they all need to be standalone, but then you need to tell them the next thing that's important to know and why it goes so well with this topic, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's so good, man. Because I tried 2 different little like mini series of beginner videos on YouTube, and they did okay. Like they really didn't do great. And it was that thing where they were like part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I think if people got to part 4, maybe they would be encouraged to go to part 1, but I don't know, maybe that would have thrown them off a little bit. So it's reassuring to me. And I think probably everyone listening, if you're going to do any sort of content, or if you're going to tell clients to do this, to be able to piece those together and take what you have and kind of, make something that is going to keep them on. That it definitely makes a lot of sense, because I think we all know now YouTube wants watch time. So the longer you can get them to watch, the better. Do those principles apply for Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and other social media platforms as well? Do you know, like if you can still kind of lead people to other posts to keep them on, do you know if that's a viable strategy and if they're looking at that as well, just like YouTube is?
Well, I do know that every social platform's goal is to keep people on the platform. In terms of funneling them like to the next thing, I don't know that there's a way of doing that in the same way of YouTube, because YouTube is not social media.
Yeah.
Really.
And YouTube you can do like an end screen and put like a video there at the end, right? And you can like you'd be much more intentional about that.
Yeah. So in terms, I can't think of a good analog for Instagram or anything for that. But other than having them follow you, and then just now they're seeing all your content and they're going to your profile and they're looking through all that. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. No, that's fine. No, that's great. I was kind of curious. I mean, I didn't think there was a really way to structure it like YouTube, but an important principle to remember that you just hit on, Wes, is these platforms want people on there as long as they're willing to be on there. So anytime you can keep somebody on there is huge, which it's kind of interesting because Instagram still caps most videos at a minute. I'm still a little surprised they're doing that unless it's more of just about the scrolling nature of Instagram. But I don't know. It seems interesting to me that they wouldn't. I mean, I guess you could do longer videos. I'm just now getting into Instagram. Actually, you were one of the ones who inspired me because I saw your stuff and I was like, all right, I'll freaking do it. I'll finally get on Instagram and utilize it because I just haven't. But I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a much nicer place to hang out than Facebook primarily. And I'm not on Twitter. I have no interest in that. LinkedIn, I just feel like I need to wear a suit to show up there. So I'm not really interested in that as much right now. But I know the power of LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you're utilizing that, but yeah.
I do. Yeah. What I was doing is a lot of repurposing of content. Like I would take my YouTube video, we would make a companion podcast out of a lot of them. So if it lent itself to an audio format, we'd make a podcast about it. I would post that on Instagram in a few ways, Facebook and LinkedIn. Almost all that's going to be going away now. Not only am I getting rid of the podcast, we're getting rid of a lot of that extra effort for all those other platforms that we're just not really seeing the value in. So not to say there's no value in doing it. I'm just saying for me and my business, we're going where the eyeballs really are and just doubling down on that.
Yeah, that's going to be huge, man. Yeah, I'm super excited for you. I can't wait to see what that shapes up. We'll have to do next time you come on, we'll have to do like a look at your YouTube, once you give it full effort and full attention to see what happens with that. And as long as the numbers are good. If not, I may be too embarrassed to come back. Well, that's all right. Case studies, good or bad, are always good and interesting. Yeah. So you were on in episode 59 was your first episode, which was fall of 2020. I'm curious, since then, because it's been almost a year since that came out. I think by the time this comes out, it may be right around a year. Have you seen any differences for websites now compared to the height of the COVID and the pandemic stuff? Like, have you seen business owners understand the importance and take websites more seriously? Have you seen people kind of forget about websites since, as we all know, most people are very fickle and forget what was going on a few months ago? What have you seen in the landscape of websites now that we're, fairly past the initial wave of the COVID stuff?
Okay, so what I'm seeing, I don't know if this really answers your question, but basically during the height of the pandemic, everything was, people were very interested all of a sudden in getting their house in order, right? Making sure their website was great because they had time to do it, right? So like my online course sales went way up, my YouTube views went way up because people had time to devote to this when they normally were busy doing other things. Now I am seeing a significant drop off in almost everything because, well, A, I think it's because people are out of the house finally and they're just making up for lost time. B, it's like hot girl summer right now and everyone's out for that reason too. So I think summertime is just kind of a dip for what we do. I don't know if you experience the same thing, but I think people are just out, they're on vacations more. They're not, it's like being like the last week of senior year, they're just kind of checked out.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's super COVID related or if it's just like a natural summertime thing.
I think after the pandemic last year, I think that's lent itself, just from what I've seen in my experience, that more people are out. I think you're totally right on that. And everyone is traveling, like at least stateside. I know I've got a lot of students in Canada. It's a little bit different there, but my family and I, like, we went on vacation and I have never seen so much traffic going down to the beach. Like, good God, it was like everyone was out. So I do think a lot of people who didn't travel last year and stayed put are like extra interested to travel and get out. And maybe people are doing more vacations and more trips and there's more going on. I think that's definitely a part of it. But that all corresponds with what we do as web designers and what our clients are going through. Because I think you're right, Wes. I think we are in kind of at the time of recording this, we're kind of at the tail end of summer, which is wild. But I do feel like that's definitely contributed to what's going on online. I think business owners are just hanging out with families and doing trips. But all that to say, I always see an influx. I did as a web designer and I do with my brand now in the early fall. It seems like that's when people get more serious into learning and launching stuff, and they get more serious about their businesses. Traveling's done primarily. So I would imagine you'll probably see an influx, and I think I will too. My numbers across the board have been down a little bit, not only with sales, but views and everything through the summer. So sounds very similar. Actually, I'm quite reassured to know that that happened to you as well. I hate that happened to both of us, but it does seem to be the case. And even some of my students have had slower periods through May, June, and July here in 2021 and in August. So yeah, I think it's going to rebound. And I think it's all a byproduct of what happened last year with the pandemic. So all that to say, if we can put a cap on this point, I would not be surprised if website numbers are down, but I think it's seasonal, and I think it's definitely kind of cyclical based off of what we just went through. So yeah, I was curious to see what you had seen like that. As far as getting numbers up and being prepared for this next wave in the fall of 2021, what are some recommendations for this wave? Because I do, and the reality is sometimes numbers are down just because people aren't working as hard, or maybe they're traveling. Like my numbers were down in June because I was on vacation and I didn't work the week before or after. So of course my numbers are going to be down. To be ready for the numbers to come up and for things to change, what do you recommend people focus on with their website? Is it to create really good content? Is it to revamp service pages and your offer? Is it get more serious about some type of funnel? What are some strategies that you recommend? Yeah,
I would say all of those things. So basically, what you want to make sure your website's doing for you, because trust me, I used to be a designer. I still do design, but I used to think of myself more as a designer versus how I think of myself now. So there's a really common trap a lot of designers get into with their own websites where they feel it has to be a portfolio website. That's only part of it. Like clients, yes, they're interested in seeing the work you've done. They're also interested in seeing results and interested in seeing if you're a real person or not. I can't tell you how many websites I go to for like web designers who they've got some really nice work showcased, but there's no human element to it. Like it feels like am I hiring someone in my town? Am I hiring someone like on the other side of the world? Like there's no way of knowing. So you really want to make it personable, and you want to convey the benefits that you bring to your clients, which is, I think, I'm sorry to say, but at this day and age, I think that has to bring some element of copy into it, like sales copywriting. This is good for two reasons, because we all know the pain of the client who never delivers this stuff. So if you can bring that in-house and you can handle that for them, you keep the whole project on track, and you can do it in a way that's actually going to move sales for them. So if you can talk about that kind of thing, that we don't just provide pretty websites. And the other thing is too, you shouldn't talk so much about the technology. Every web designer loves to talk. They used to love to use the word WordPress everywhere. They love to say like all these technological words. That's not the important stuff, right? The important stuff is the results you bring. So talk less about WordPress, talk more about revenue and ROI.
Great points. Wow. Such great points, Wes, for every web designer to think about and to articulate on their site. I've seen the same thing, well, in every one of those points, but particularly with the personality to a website, I agree. I still see a lot of web designers who I often say, who the heck is running the show here? Like, who are you? I see this brand name, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I'd love to see who's behind the brand. I don't even care where it is, but if you are attracting and appealing to local clients, that's a great upsell right there and a plus, because a lot of people want to work local if they like and trust somebody. So that's a biggie. I agree. Copywriting is more important than ever, and it is a solution to getting content, which is the main struggle every web designer has. If you can provide that as a service, that's great. I think you saw I just had Jules Dan, one of our mutual colleagues who's you've been on his show, who's a copywriter. We had a really good talk about copywriting, and really interesting, I think, to hear about the brochure portfolio mentality versus results and more strategic type of thinking, because that is so important. No matter if it's a service page, all of your copy on your website. And then additionally, the other thing I wanted to mention is, when it comes to talking about WordPress and Divi or Elementor and the tech stuff, you should not mention that on your website unless you are trying to work with somebody who is an agency and they're looking for WordPress designers, or WordPress or developers. Like, there's no reason an average web designer working with businesses should probably even say those things. Like, you could say those things maybe a layer back if somebody's interested in what tools you use, if they want to edit a website, but generally that can be done one-on-one, and it shouldn't even be on the front of a website. So I couldn't agree more, man. That's interesting to hear you say that, because that's a big one. It can be a deterrent for clients too, can it? Because if an automotive shop is looking for a web designer and they want to get better rankings on Google, and then they see this web designer who looks like a nice guy or a nice gal, but there's WordPress, Divi, CSS, HTML, they're like, I don't even know what that means, right?
Yeah. It's like, don't tell me how the sausage is made, just make it for me, basically. And when you talk about all those things, you kind of make yourself into a commodity versus someone who's delivering results. It's the hands versus the head principle. You want to sell yourself as the brains of the operation, not the hands that are just sitting there coding whatever the client asks for.
That's a good point.
You're going a step beyond that.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking it from if you put yourself in your client's shoes, are they going to be more interested in somebody saying, I'm really good at WordPress and I can code like a magician with CSS? Or would they be more interested in, I can help grow your business and, get better conversions and better rankings on Google, something like that? I imagine that's a little more appealing, right? Like, we really need to kind of shift our mindset to what is going to be of interest to the client, to our customers.
Yeah. Absolutely. But then you also have to think of this too, because I do see a lot of digital agency websites that make those kind of claims. We help you grow your business, but then they don't really say how. We need some details. We need to know, like, what are the mechanisms in place that help you, allow you to do this for your clients? Is it the persuasive copywriting? Is it lead magnet development to build your email list of future customers? We need a little bit more information rather than just that big, bold, kind of generic statement too.
That's a great point, man. And I think you could back that up in a number of different ways. You could explain how, and this is where, like you mentioned earlier, case studies and results can be key, because if you do have a couple projects that went really well and suddenly your old clients are and maybe they used to get like 5 submissions in their contact form, and maybe now they're getting like 20 a month or something. Well, that's awesome. Showcase that, like put that into a little case study and showcase that. I imagine that's the perfect type of thing to back that statement up, right? Some actual proof and some more information on that.
Exactly. And people always think that these have to be huge numbers. They don't. You mentioned 5 to 20. What if it's 5 to 6? And do a case study the same way, but say like I'm terrible at math. We increased their opt-ins 20%, which translated into this number of dollars per month. The website was paid for within the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
That kind of language is really helpful too.
That's true. It's interesting. One of my favorite examples of a web design agency doing this really well is actually the agency who does the website for my business coach with Superfast Business. The agency is called Studio One Design. And I just went through their masterclass, and it was really interesting because that whole masterclass was about some basic principles, but it was really mainly about case studies on their clients and how they helped increase their leads and increase their income. And it was all based around good design that converts, copy, and then results based like case studies. Like they looked at, now these folks are getting, like triple the amount of email signups than they did previously. We've created lead gens. Their sales have gone up. So I think anytime we can do that, that is key. And I think this can be kind of daunting because when a web designer or anyone thinks about, okay, how am I going to like do a case study? That sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, it might be some work, but it's so worthwhile. And you can multi-purpose that just like you're multi-purposing your content, right, Wes? Like I imagine you could take a case study, put it on your homepage. It could go into another page. It could go on your social media. Like we could really get creative with one piece of content with this, right?
For sure. You can use it. Yeah, you can use it on social. You can use it in email. You mentioned Jules Dan. He's now working for me he's interviewing 4 of my paid students in my paid program to get their stories. And what we're going to be using, though, we can probably use them on the website too somewhere, but where we're really going to use them is in the email campaign that goes out when people are in that 7-day buying window of the program.
Gotcha.
So there's a lot of ways you can use these. And here's the thing, you said a lot of work. The hardest part is just kind of getting the story from them. These do not have to be long. No one wants to read this in like a long article. They want to see like quick little, think of it like an infographic. They want to see quick little charts, how much this did, like show the before and after. I would say between 2 and 4 paragraphs is enough text.
Yeah, agreed. Particularly when it comes to because you're still scanning and skimming a case study. Because no one's as interested in that project except for you and your client. Like no one else has that level of interest, so they just want to know the highlights. They want to know, okay, what were the results? Yeah. And I think that's a really important point and a great way to grow. And it really doesn't need to be overly complicated. One of my toxic traits is I overcomplicate things to where I have to keep reminding myself, just keep it simple. Start simple. I can always tweak it and add on to it, but keep it simple for now and just get it done. And I think that's probably the mindset anyone would need to have. But man, some great points here, Wes, as far as what we can do with our websites as we lead into what is always typically a busier season. I know as a web designer, my busiest influxes of jobs always came in around like February and March, and then September and October. Those were generally when a lot of businesses really wanted to move forward. And from a fiscal standpoint, most businesses want to get their marketing budgets out the door and spent by the end of the year because it resets for next year. So that's, I think, probably why a lot of people, like I had clients, if I had a project that started in November, they'd want to pay in full. And I'm like, well, sweet, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. Instead of like paying, half in November and half in February or January. So that's important. But great tips, man. Great tips on website stuff. Well, we've already covered a lot. I mean, these are most of the questions I had about the landscape of where websites are now. I'm curious, when it comes to, we talked about the importance of leading everything to the website, doing our content, investing in really good copy results, different mindset between what we do and tech speak versus the result-oriented kind of copy. Where do you see some of these other social media platforms going? Or what do you think is going to be most prevalent maybe even as we wrap up 2021 and as we go into 22, which is wild to say. But where do you see like TikTok exploding? Do you think Instagram's going to continue to be on the rise? Is LinkedIn making a comeback with web design? Like what do you foresee in the landscape of social media that we might want to consider?
Yeah, so there's a few thoughts. I think that Instagram is really trying to be TikTok. They're really trying to push for that. So that could either backfire on them or it could maybe push TikTok out. Because people, I think, we've seen it happen with like Snapchat, that kind of thing. So when they brought in stories, it kind of replaced that functionality. And at the end of the day, like Facebook and Instagram are huge, right? And they could push out TikTok if it became the same thing. So I think when we're talking about using social media for our businesses, it's really important to go with the formats that are getting the eyeballs right now, that is Reels. It gets a little challenging when it comes to how do you make that style of content for more educational purposes. I see it a lot. Sometimes I cringe at it. Sometimes it's good, but I really can't take these like pointing at, points anymore. Like there's no reason dancing needs to accompany this stuff. Like it's not entertaining. Yeah. Like people dance on there because it's entertaining, but then when marketers take it over and of course ruin everything, and we just like feel the need to dance and just point at something, the point doesn't come across any better, and it feels like it's like dumbing it down and just kind of being like, what's the word I'm trying to find? Like.
I guess it can get a little lame when marketing takes over something that is not meant for business or not meant for for anything like that.
So here's my point. I don't know where things are going necessarily, like what's the big one to look out for. What I do know is pick one or two that you have like a natural proclivity for. The platforms you're already on, the one where you think, okay, I could create that kind of content. And then just really go deep into it. Because what I don't want you guys to do is what I did, where we're doing everything, kind of just taking stuff and repurposing out everywhere. Repurposing is one thing because it doesn't take a lot of effort. But you need to pick one platform that's really going to do it for you for the most part. For me, it's YouTube. Technically not social media, but whatever. It's content creation. So just pick the one that's going to be the easiest for you to do and to stick with.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a perfect answer to that question. I will say though, man, I mean, your social media did inspire me, and it often reminds me to re-engage with your content. Like there's been times where like I'll see, a little podcast drop or something like, oh, that actually sounds interesting to me. I want to check that out. So I think it is worthwhile sprinkling in, as long as, like you said, it's the platform that you're most interested in, you're comfortable with, because we do run the risk, as everybody who's running a business wants to be on everything and everywhere, but you just can't. So I totally agree. And I actually think I'm glad that we started with where you're at in your business, with kind of taking a break with the podcast and really investing in YouTube, because that is a perfect case study and prime example of you analyzing your business, looking at the numbers and looking at what is really making the biggest impact and the biggest difference, and then going all in on that. And I can't recommend that enough. And it's kind of what I'm going through now too. Like we talked about, I really need to invest more in my YouTube channel, and I'm kind of putting all the resources in preparation for that. And I think every business owner and web designer should do the same. Look at what's working right now. Ultimately, this conversation has led to the fact that everything should go to your website. So that's home base. That's Basecamp. That's where we know everything needs to go. Now the question is, once that's optimized, we've got good copy, we've got results oriented, funnels and copy in there. We're not talking tech speak to clients. We're really personal. We've made it an engaging, fun experience that builds trust and likability. How do we get this out? So I love that. I think just that idea of focusing on what you want and where you want to go and how you come across on those platforms. I know one reason I am enjoying Instagram is I'm intentionally trying not to do the pointy videos and stuff. I had debated on it, and then I was like, you know what? First of all, I don't want to take the time to edit little videos like that, or have now I have a podcast editor. I don't want to have him do that. What I'm doing is keeping it super simple. Like just like for example, my talk with Jules more recently, copywriting reminds me of the show Mad Men, which is one of my favorite shows that me and my wife watch. And I just held up a DVD of Mad Men and was like, what do you think of with copywriting? This is what I think of. It was simple as that. There were no graphics.
Saw the post.
No subtitles, just really simple. Here's my thoughts on it. What do you think? Listen to the episode to let me just think. It was a very quick post. Didn't take me too much time. But I do find that that's resonating better than trying to get too corporate-y in a fun environment.
Yeah. I watched that post from start to finish and it was great. And I would prefer that to just you pointing at something. And again, it's just, and sorry to anybody listening who does that. I'm really not trying to be that guy, but it just comes across as we're trying to shoehorn something into a format that it doesn't really belong in.
Yeah. And I think it's all right. Sometimes it's good to be challenged on what you're doing marketing wise. And I think some people listening are probably doing that. And then, we're not, trying to offend anybody or come down on you, but it is worthwhile looking at this and saying, okay, maybe even just trying something more organic, or I feel like more often than not, the more simple things are and the more real, and even just a straight video, just talking to it for less than a minute, that can go a long way, because it really is, it's communication. You're communicating with somebody on different platforms. I know one thing I've always struggled with that I'm really trying to get over, and I'm generally always myself everywhere I am, but I do tend to be a little different on YouTube versus podcasts versus Instagram versus Facebook. And I'm really trying, and I'm curious if you've experienced this, Wes. I'm trying to just be who I am 100% on all these platforms. And what I mean by that is I'm not like, I guess I'm not like a salesperson on YouTube, but I do often, when it comes to social media, I tend to try to talk a little faster and get the point across because I only have so much time. Whereas I'm kind of just being myself, and then I'll just, make the point simpler. Do you find yourself struggling with coming across differently on different platforms at all?
I don't know about coming across differently, but what you just said, yes, in terms of just the rate of speech and stuff, because here's the thing with a podcast, people are much more, they're willing to consume a podcast with a little bit more space in it, with a little bit more personality in it, because they're not held captive by that podcast. Everyone listening right now, what are you doing? Are you walking your dog? Are you washing your dishes? Your point is they're doing something else while they're listening, versus a YouTube video or something on Facebook. You got to grab them. So I understand the impulse to want to amp it up and be faster and be a little more animated, because I think it does help. You don't want to go too crazy with it and come across like, I'm trying to think of, the guy in the late night infomercials.
Right. Mattress on sale, only $19.99. Act now.
It must be crazy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's what I meant is, I'm not terribly different, but I do. And I guess you're right. Maybe it is worthwhile being intentional about, being quicker and concise and maybe a little more energetic, but definitely,
because the camera does take away about half of anyone's personality. Get anyone in front of the camera for the first time, and you will look at yourself like you don't realize how you come across sometimes. Yeah. So I do feel like when I do, I've gotten this, I'm doing it right now, talking with my hands a lot more, because I'm trying to amp up the energy level, because it does translate into the camera.
That's a good point.
So it's an important thing. Yeah.
It's also really important to think about these platforms if you are going to do any sort of content and marketing, because you do have to abide by their rules. And I think more importantly, you just said it, Wes, you have to think about what people are doing when they're on these platforms. Like if they're listening to a podcast, you're right. They're probably in a car, mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, whatever. We can talk for as long as we want, as chill as we want, and it's going to go over great. This is personally why I love podcasting more than anything. It suits my personality that likes to take my time on stuff and dive into topics deeper and not have to rush. Interestingly enough, sometimes I repurpose my podcast and YouTube videos the same. Like I'd have a podcast go out and then I'd have the video version of it on YouTube. Podcast would go over great and people would love it. And then YouTube, I'd get people saying, this video is too long, or, oh my gosh, it's a half an hour. And at first I was a little like, well, I don't fast forward it or listen to it at different times. But then I realized it does make sense because they probably hopped on video. They're going to watch. You probably want something fairly concise, depending on what the topic is. If you're going to do a big old video on how to build an Elementor website, you can take an hour and you'll be fine.
Right.
But if it's, five quick tips for Facebook ads, maybe it should be shorter. So thinking about where your customer is, maybe it's the same customer, but maybe their behavior is different, right? Between different platforms, because we interact with Facebook differently than we do YouTube and podcasts.
Absolutely. I listen to so many podcasts because I can do other stuff, but I would probably never watch the video version of that podcast like on YouTube. When I'm sitting at YouTube, I'm going to watch other types of videos, and I'll listen to the podcasts that are a little more long form when I'm out and about.
Yeah.
That's just me.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I post these interviews on YouTube. Surprisingly, I still have a lot of people that watch them on YouTube. And I think maybe that's because web designers are often building a website and they'll have this going on the YouTube.
Yeah.
I did that when I was building sites. I'd have the YouTube version going, but now I do it with just, podcast apps and stuff. But either way, great point. Think about who your customers are and what they're doing, depending on what type of content you're pushing out. And again, to put a cap on this conversation, bring it back to your website. I love that, Wes. I think you've really given some awesome strategies on this one, man. One final question for you, but before we get to that, where would you like my audience I know it's a little bit different than your key demographic, but if anyone wants to check you out, do you want them to go to your YouTube channel, your website? Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, YouTube channel is great. It's Wes McDowell. But I think that the thing that would maybe be most helpful for people is, how we talked about how you can really make your website say all the right things and be that salesperson for your business, not only for you, but for your clients. If you want to deliver this kind of thing, I do have the masterclass. So if you go to wesmcdowell.com/training, that's going to basically within an hour give you everything you need in order to really strategize the kind of website that's not only going to look good, but it's going to actually say all the right things. It's going to take a lot of the hard work off your plate because I'm giving you permission in this, basically in this blueprint framework, to strip out a lot of unnecessary pages that do absolutely nothing for your business or for your clients' businesses and concentrate on just kind of the core, 5 or 6 pages that do the most good.
That's perfect. Yeah, we'll have that linked in the show notes. Definitely recommend that. My final question for you is more of a personal one about your YouTube. Are you going to do anything different now that you're giving it full attention? Are you going to do longer form videos? What's your strategy going to look like now on YouTube? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'm definitely being much more intentional about the kinds of videos I'm doing. So what I'm doing now is one a week, basically they come out every Tuesday morning, but I'm adding to that because I'm trying to, because the thing about YouTube is they kind of will decide for themselves what you're known for the most. Yeah. Unfortunately, we talked about this before, my Facebook ad videos tend to get the most traction. So I know if I put a Facebook ads video up there, I'm going to get a lot of views. The bad thing is I don't sell anything to do with Facebook ads. That is not really what I provide. So what I'm trying to do is be more known as the small business website person. So I'm making more tutorials, utilizing Elementor, starter templates, just basically these start to finish tutorials that will get people who are searching for how to make a website. The idea being not only will they watch that one, but then they'll watch some of my more. So the way I've looked at it, I'll backtrack quickly. I'm making 3 main types of videos. How videos, which is the tutorials, what videos, which are kind of like the 5 things you need to know, or the 5 tips, the what kind of videos like that. And then the why videos. Those are the deeper ones. Those are the more opinion pieces, like, our website's dead. No, they're not, because this, and this, so it's not teaching them a start to finish tutorial. It's changing their way of thinking a bit. So the more they get down in the funnel, the more they're kind of hearing from me as a person and my opinions. So I'm just being more intentional with all of that.
I love that. Well, first of all, I'm going to implement the heck out of that. How, what, why. That's great. And I think for everyone listening, even if you just do occasional content for authority building and to give to your clients, that mindset's awesome because some videos should be like how to do this. If you're going to tell your clients how to do some certain things, maybe it's how to set up my Google My Business or something.
Yeah. Meat and potatoes.
What might be, okay, like what our programs might you be interested in? What tools do we use that, you can expect to use or whatever? Why it might be, here's why you should invest in really good copy for your website and then we can help you or something like that. That's a really interesting approach to sales, whether on a website or with content marketing. So yeah, I love that.
What happens on YouTube is people will search you out based on how to do something. Mm-hmm. But then if they watch more of your videos and they like you, they're going to want to hear more from you. It's like listening to you in your podcast, Josh. They want to hear who you are as a person a little bit too. They want to hear some of your opinions. So I want to provide all that gray area in the middle.
Yeah. Well, most people listen to this podcast for knowledge, inspiration, and they also want to know what word I'm going to create on the podcast, because pretty much every episode I end up mixing words together, and we've got like a whole dictionary of new words in the English language. So one day somebody's going to catalog all those, and I can't wait. So maybe that person's listening right now. Yeah, Josh-isms. Yeah, that's funny. It's funny because I was just looking at my YouTube channel. My most popular video is a Google Analytics overview, and it's at the time of this has 339,000 views. It's my most popular video.
Nice.
But I'm not that far into Google Analytics. Like I just know the basics and that's what I shared. And I had no lead gen. There was no, and maybe now after talking with you, maybe I'll go back and add an end screen to that video. That's like, hey, if you like this, maybe you can, go here. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah. Be smart about that video. It's getting eyeballs. So you want to get people to something else after that for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wow. I'm super challenged. So yeah, I knew this was going to be awesome, not only for my audience, but I knew we were going to get in some personal coaching for me too. So always enjoy talking with you, Wes. Thanks so much for your time, man. Again, I'm really pumped about, how you're open about pivoting some of the things that you're doing and focusing on YouTube. I'm really excited to see how it goes. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be big time for you. So,
well, I hope so, Josh. Thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah. Thanks for coming again. Cheers, man.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.